Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from RAU'S IAS Study Circle. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from your UPSC perspective. Now today we shall discuss the important news which has appeared in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 17 January 2021. The news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion from our examination perspective.
Now this particular article appears on page number 10. The article is titled as Central Mulls, the BIC model, that is a banking investment company model for undertaking the bank recapitalization. The article that we are going to discuss here shall become important from the perspective of prelims Indian economy. This article is also important because in prelims 2018, a related question related to the bank recapitalization has already been asked. Now, before I start discussing this particular article in much greater detail, let me first give you the background. I hope all of you must be aware about the concept of the recapitalization of the public sector banks. See, basically the government of India, it is a majority owner of the PSBs. So accordingly, this infusion of capital by the government into PSBs, it is referred to as the recapitalization. This recapitalization of PSBs can take place in mainly two different manners. First and foremost, the government can infuse the capital through the budgetary support. That is, in the budget itself, the government can allocate certain amount of money to be infused into the PSBs. And the second methodology is through the issuance of the recapitalization bonds. Now, this infusion of capital by the government into PSBs is critical from mainly two perspectives. First and foremost, I hope you must be aware that presently in case of India, the banks have accumulated higher amount of non-performing assets. This has not only adversely affected the credit creation, but it has also led to decline in the investment rates. So in a way, the banking sector, which has come to be dominated by PSBs, does not have sufficient amount of capital in order to give loans. So this infusion of the capital by the government into PSBs would in turn kickstart the credit creation and hence improve the investment rates. Secondly, presently the banks in case of India are implementing the Basel III norms. As per the Basel III norms laid down by the Reserve Bank of India, the banks are required to maintain a capital adequacy ratio of 9% with an additional 2.5% of the capital conservation buffer. In order to meet the higher capital adequacy norms as laid down by the RBI, the banks need to have higher amount of capital. And in case of the PSBs, this higher capital has to be provided by the owner, that is the government of India. See, recently in September 2020, the Parliament gave an approval of infusion of almost around rupees 20,000 crores into PSBs. Accordingly, in December 2020, the Government of India issued the zero coupon recapitalization bonds worth rupees 5,500 crores in order to infuse capital into Punjab and Sindh Bank. Now, this is considered to be a kind of financial innovation undertaken by the Government of India for infusing capital into PSBs. This is so because earlier when the recapitalization bonds were issued by the Government of India, they were interest-bearing recapitalization bonds. But this time, these recapitalization bonds issued by the Government of India do not carry any kind of interest. That is why it is considered to be a kind of financial innovation undertaken by the Government of India to infuse the capital. Accordingly, this particular aspect of zero coupon recapitalization bonds becomes important from the perspective of your UPSC prelims examination. Now, this particular article here highlights that the Reserve Bank of India has raised certain concerns with respect to the issuance of the zero coupon recap bonds. Accordingly, in order to address this concern raised by the RBI, the central government has proposed the banking investment company model, which was earlier recommended by the PJ Nayak Committee on the reforms in the PSBs. Hence, as part of this particular video analysis, we'll understand as to how do the recapitalization bonds work, what is a new recapitalization plan undertaken by the government of India, why has the RBI raised concerns. Next, we'll discuss the idea of bank investment company as put forward by the PJ Nayak committee. So let us first understand as to how do the recapitalization bonds actually work. Now let's say the government of India wants to infuse 100 crores into a particular public sector bank. Let's say in this particular case it is the State Bank of India. Now let's say the government of India does not has 100 crores to infuse the money into the PSBs. In that case, the government can go for the issuance of the recapitalization bond. In this particular case, the government can issue a recapitalization bond whose face value is equal to rupees 100 crore, and it can ask the State Bank of India to buy this recapitalization bond. So let's say the State Bank of India has rupees 100 crores in the form of depositors' money. So this money is used by the State Bank of India to buy the recapitalization bonds. So in a way, by issuing the recapitalization bond, the government is essentially borrowing money from the State Bank of India. Now here, this becomes interesting. Now whatever money the government has borrowed from the State Bank of India, the same money is in turn injected back into the State Bank of India in the form of a equity. That means here the capital infusion is taking place. Now let's understand as to what would happen from the perspective of government and what would happen from the perspective of the PSBs. See, as far as government is concerned here, the government has borrowed 100 crores from State Bank of India and the same money is then infused into SBI. So no money actually is going out of the government's pockets. This is from the perspective of the government. As far as the State Bank of India is concerned, earlier it had 100 crores from the depositors. So this 100 crore was actually in a form of a liability for the State Bank of India. But this 100 crore has been lent to the government of India in the form of recapitalization bond. So this 100 crore now has been invested in the form of recapitalization bond by the State Bank of India. So accordingly, this 100 crore for SBI would now become an asset. And since these recapitalization bonds usually are interest bearing, the State Bank of India would be able to earn interest on this particular investment. So this is a kind of win-win situation for both the government as well as the PSBs. For the government, it enables the government to meet the higher capital adequacy norms under the Basel III requirements. It enables the government to strengthen the balance sheet of the banks through the infusion of the extra capital. And thirdly, as per the government accounting norms, the money which is raised by the government through the issuance of recapitalization bond, that is not added up to the fiscal deficit. So the fiscal deficit of the government of India remains unaffected. But please do note that the money which is raised by the government through the issuance of recapitalization bonds, it is added up to the public debt. So while the public debt of the government through the issuance of the recapitalization bonds increases, the fiscal deficit remains unaffected. As far as the benefits for the PSPs is concerned, first and foremost, the money which is invested in the recapitalization bond is considered to be safe and secure. It is simply because these bonds are issued by the government of India. Secondly, the infusion of higher capital into PSPs improves their financial position and thus kickstart the credit creation and improve the investment cycles. See, if you look at the previous recapitalization plans undertaken by the government of India, between the years 2017 to 2020, the government had infused almost around 2.5 lakh crore through the recapitalization bonds. The recapitalization bonds which are earlier issued by the government of India, they were interest bearing. Like the example which I gave here, if the State Bank of India had invested 100 crores in the recapitalization bond, the State Bank of India would be earning interest on that. So between the years 2017-20, the government had to pay almost around rupees 48,000 crores, and this interest was paid until the end of 2020. So, because of the recapitalization bonds which were earlier issued by the government of India, the government had to pay a high amount of interest. Hence, in order to reduce its interest burden, now the government has come up with a new financial innovation which we have not seen earlier. As part of the new financial innovation, now the government of India has decided to issue the zero coupon recapitalization bonds. See, in normal case, when we talk about the zero coupon bonds, the zero coupon bonds are issued at discount and they are redeemed at the face value. Now, for example, let's consider a case of the normal zero coupon bond which is issued in the market. Now, the face value of this bond could be rupees 100, but it is issued at a discount. That means, as an investor, you can buy this particular bond at rupees 85. Now, let's say the maturity period of this particular bond is 3 years. So, upon the maturity of this particular bond, you would be getting back an amount which is equivalent to its face value, that is rupees 100. So while you have bought this particular bond at 85, that is you have bought this particular bond at discount, the money which you are getting back is equal to its face value of rupees 100. This is in case of the normal zero coupon bond. But the zero coupon recapitalization bonds are little different. They are considered to be different because these zero coupon recapitalization bonds, they are not issued at discount. Rather, they are issued at the face value, which means in this particular case, as an investor, you will be buying this particular bond at rupees 100, and upon the maturity period, you'll be getting back rupees 100. So there is no interest which you can earn on such recapitalization bonds. So as far as the bank is concerned, now in case of Punjab and Sindh Bank, the Punjab and Sindh Bank has bought the recapitalization bond worth rupees 5,500 crores. Later on, after 5 years, how much money is this particular bank going to get? It is going to get back only rupees 5,500 crores without any additional interest amount. So in a way, the banks would not earn any interest on the zero coupon recapitalization bonds. So this is precisely the reason as to why the RBI has raised concern with respect to the issuance of the zero coupon recap bonds. Apart from that, a number of experts have pointed out that repeated infusion of capital into PSPs without carrying out reforms in their governance, this would be futile. Because if you don't reform these PSPs and if you keep on infusing the capital, ultimately this is going to be waste. What we have to do is, first and foremost, we would have to strengthen the governance of PSPs. Once the governance is strengthened, then we can go for the recapitalization. Accordingly, now the government of India has proposed a plan of the banking investment company in order to improve the overall performance of PSBs. Now, presently the banking sector in case of India has come to be dominated by PSPs, where the PSPs account for almost around 70 to 75% of the banking assets. However, most of the NPAs are concentrated in PSPs. This is leading to decrease in the credit creation, higher losses, loss to the taxpayers' money. These PSPs are considered to be less efficient as compared to the new private sector banks, particularly banks such as ICICI, Axis, SDFC, etc. So the lower efficiency of PSPs has in turn contributed to the present economic slowdown. Now there are a number of reasons for the poor performance of PSPs in comparison to the private sector banks. While the private sector banks are regulated only by the Reserve Bank of India, the PSPs are under the dual regulation of RBI as well as the Finance Ministry. Usually, there is huge amount of political interference in the working of the public sector banks. Normally, the government of the day calls upon the public sector banks to bail out the loss-making PSUs. So whenever any loss-making PSU such as BSNL, Air India, etc. if they are in need of funds, usually the government forces the PSBs to give loans to such loss making PSUs. That is the reason as to why the PSPs have accumulated higher amount of non-performing assets. So in a way, the PSPs do not have the necessary operational, financial and strategic autonomy. They are not allowed to take decisions on their own. Rather, the decisions are based upon the political considerations. Apart from that, whenever the board of directors or the CEO of a bank is to be appointed, usually such appointments are not based on merit, rather, the appointments are based upon the political considerations. So, normally, the government of the day appoints those pliable people who would listen to them later on so that they can force the PSPs to give loans to the loss making companies. Other reasons for the poor performance include the red tapeism and external vigilance enforcement by various agencies such as CVC, CBI, etc. So, in order to solve these problems associated with the performance of the PSBs, the PJNI committee had put forward the proposal of the Bank Investment Company. See, presently the government owns the majority of the shares in the PSBs. As per the plan, the government needs to transfer these shares in the PSBs to a separate company known as a bank investment company. The bank investment company would be a company registered under the Companies Act. It would be like a holding company. As a holding company, it would hold the shares of the government of India in various PSBs. When the government transfer the shares in the PSBs, usually such transfer of shares would be accompanied by an agreement. As per this agreement, the government of the day would lay down only the broad objectives to be fulfilled by the bank investment company. These broad objectives could be in terms of what is the performance expected from the bank investment company, say in terms of profits earned by the banks, say in terms of how much of loans they have to give in a particular year. So in a way, the government would focus only upon the broad objectives and desist from micromanagement of the banks. The bank investment company that would be managed by professionals who have the necessary expertise in the banking and financial sector. This would have complete autonomy with respect to management of the banks. For example, the bank investment company may make the necessary appointment to the board of directors, and it would ensure that these board of directors are appointed based upon merit rather than based upon the political considerations. The bank investment company would also take care of the other needs of the banks, particularly with respect to raising of capital, giving of loans. So all of these aspects will be taken care by the bank investment company. So setting up of a bank investment company would have a number of benefits. First and foremost, this will lead to a hands-off approach with respect to the management of the banks. Government would have no micro role in the management of the public sector banks. There would be no political interference. The government would only focus upon laying down the broad objectives, and ultimately it would be the bank investment company which will be required to meet the targets laid down by the government of India. So this would lead to the professional management of PSPs. And thirdly, just as how the new private sector banks such as ICICI, SDFC are considered to be efficient, even the PSPs would be able to match up to their efficiency. So these are some of the important aspects which one should know with respect to this particular article. With this, let us now take up the next article. Now this particular article appears on page number 6. This article basically highlights that Union Home Minister Mr. Amit Shah has recently given a statement. According to this particular statement, we need to change the way we view the police. Hence, from the perspective of the UPSC examination, let us focus upon the important topic of the police reforms. This topic shall be important from the perspective of GS paper 2, particularly under the subsection of role of civil services in a democracy. If you look at the role of the police force before India's independence, the police force was an agent of the colonial rulers. It was considered to an oppressive force which was used to suppress the will of the Indian citizens. After the India's independence, when the Indian constitution was formulated, public order as a subject was placed under the state list. Accordingly, all the states have adopted their own police force. The central government also maintains its own police force in order to assist the state governments in various policing functions. Most of the state government have now modeled their police forces along the lines of the Indian Police Act 1861. So, if you look at the police force presently in case of India, it is considered to be an agency of the democratically elected government, unlike the agent of a colonial ruler. It operates within the framework of law which has been passed by the respective state government. So, the basic role of the police force today is to uphold and enforce the laws, investigate crimes, and ensure the safety of the people. But presently, there are a number of problems with the functioning of the police. Even today, the functioning of the police is governed by the outdated Indian Police Act 1861, which is considered to be a British era law. The police force does not enjoy sufficient amount of functional autonomy. Normally, there is huge amount of political interference in the functioning of the police forces. The police officers are required to take direct orders from the elected officials. This, in a way, leads to politicization of the police force. Apart from that, normally the police forces are transferred or promoted based upon the will of the elected officials. So there is no professionalism with respect to how the police force is managed, particularly with respect to transfer, posting, etc. So, over a period of time, the police officers develop a close bonding with the elected officials, and this in turn further aggravates the politicization of the police force. So, this lack of security of tenure in turn hurts the professionalism that is required to govern the police force. The police force has been invested with the necessary power to use the force. However, this force has to be used for certain legitimate purpose. Unfortunately, this power vested with the police has been misused. This is evident in the extrajudicial killings, custodial torture, rapes, etc. So, in a way, there is poor accountability of the police. Further, there is lack of professionalism with respect to investigation of various crimes. And lastly, if you look at the police force in case of India, it is considered to be overburdened. This is primarily on the account of the fact that there are huge amount of vacancies in the police forces. Most of the state governments spend less than 3% of their budget on maintenance of the police forces. So there is a need to address all of these problems associated with the functioning of the police. The police of the future, it should be more oriented towards serving the needs of the citizens. It should be completely autonomous with an independent legal framework. It should be efficient, professional, people friendly, and should be able to uphold the rule of law with professional integrity. In the past, a number of measures have been undertaken by the government of India with respect to appointment of various committees in order to bring about the reforms in the functioning of the police. It started way back in 1977 with the appointment of the National Police Commission, Ribeiro Committee in 1998, Padmanabhaiah Committee in 2000, Malimat Committee, then the Supreme Court directions in the Prakash Singh versus Union of India case. This was in the year 2006. Further, the Second Administrative Reforms Commission has given a number of recommendations as to how the functioning of the police can be efficiently improved. Accordingly, from the perspective, the UPSC examination will understand as to what kind of reforms have to be brought about with respect to functioning of the police. Broadly, we will take into account the recommendations of all of these committees, including the recommendations given by the second ARC. The first reform is related to the setting up of the Police Performance and Accountability Commission. Now, this is basically a recommendation given by the Second Administrative Reforms Commission in order to ensure that the state government does not unnecessarily interfere in the functioning of the police. Similar to PPAC, the Supreme Court had given a direction to a state government to set up the State Security Commission. So the difference is only in the nomenclature. According to second ARC, it should be named as PPAC, but according to Supreme Court, it should be named as the State Security Commission. But ultimately, the objective is to prevent unwarranted influence of the state government in functioning of the police. This particular commission would be a high-level panel headed by the State Home Minister. It would also comprise of the state-level DGP, the Chief Secretary of the concerned state, the leader of opposition in the Legislative Assembly, plus 5 eminent members from outside the government. The basic role of the PPAC would be to lay down the broad policies for the functioning of the police, evaluate the performance of the police on an annual level. So the idea here is the state government should not be involved in the micromanagement of the police. Instead, that role should be taken up by a high-level expert panel of PPAC. The second recommendation is related to the setting up of the Police Establishment Board. There is huge amount of political interference in transfer, posting and promotion of various police officers. Hence, in order to reduce this political interference and ensure professional management of the police forces, there is a need to set up Police Establishment Board. This will be a high-level panel headed by the Chief Secretary of the concerned state, and it would also include the DGP as well as the Home Secretary of the concerned state. The next recommendation is to set up the Police Complaints Authority, whose main role would be to inquire into allegations of corruption as well as misuse of power by the police. The next recommendation is related to the appointment of the DGP. Now, according to second ARC, the Police Performance and Accountability Commission, it should prepare a panel of 3 names to be considered for the appointment of DGP. These 3 names should basically include the names of the 3 senior-most officers. Once this panel of 3 names is prepared, it has to be forwarded to the concerned state government, and ultimately the state government would have to choose between these 3 persons to be appointed as a DGP. Once a person is appointed as a DGP, he or she must have a security of tenure of minimum 3 years. If the state government wants to remove the DGP before the end of his tenure, then compulsorily approval has to be taken from the Police Performance and Accountability Commission. The next reform is related to separation of investigation and the law and order functions. See, if we look at the nature of skill set required for carrying out law and order functions and the nature of skill set required for carrying out investigation, the skill sets which are required for carrying out these 2 functions are completely different. However, in case of India, it is normally seen that a single police officer not only carries out the law and order functions, but he also carries out the investigation related functions. So this not only leads to an overburdening on the police, but this also leads to the lapses in the investigation. Moreover, since a police who is involved in law and order function is also carrying out the investigation, it in turn enhances scope for political interference in carrying out the investigation. So accordingly, the second Administrative Reforms Commission has highlighted that there is a need to separate these 2 wings of the police. We need to have a separate wing of police dealing with investigation and a separate wing of police dealing with the law and order functions. The next reform is related to improving the police population ratio. According to second ARC, the police population ratio in case of India is 1:694. That means for approximately every 700 people in case of India, we have only 1 policeman. This ratio in case of developed economies is much better. Accordingly, we would have to improve the police population ratio, reduce the number of vacancies, and thus reduce the burden on the police personnel. Apart from that, 87% of the police personnel are basically constables. These constables have limited avenues for promotion. The maximum rank which a constable can retire as is a head constable. So they do have limited avenues for being promoted as a station house officer. So since they have limited avenues for promotion, obviously the level of motivation and morale among the lower level or the cutting edge functionaries would obviously be lower. Hence, going forward, in order to improve the morale and motivation of the constables, we would have to upgrade their skill set and also provide for the avenues for their promotion. So, these are some of the important aspects which one should know with respect to this particular article.
Now, this news appears on page number 1 and also on page number 7. Now, this news is regarding the updation of privacy issues by WhatsApp. Now, earlier, the users or consumers of WhatsApp had this choice regarding sharing of data either with Facebook or any other third party entity, and they could have either agreed or disagreed with respect to sharing of such data. Now, it is here where the privacy update has taken place. So, both these news is with respect to this privacy updates. The news on page number 1 says that WhatsApp pushes policy rollout to May 15. And the news on page number 7 says that traders body moves Supreme Court over WhatsApp new privacy policy. Now, this aspect of privacy policy as of now is in transition. So let us understand whatever has happened so far regarding this privacy update by WhatsApp. So I was saying regarding this choice of users with respect to sharing of data with Facebook or any other third entity. Now, after this privacy update by WhatsApp, what has happened is that the users were deprived of any choices, and if they chose not to share their data with Facebook or any other third entity, then their account could be deleted. Now, this not only amounted to right to privacy but also resulted in sort of a backlash by consumers using WhatsApp. So it was noticed that number of users of WhatsApp shifted to Signal or Telegram, which are other messaging services. So after this privacy update, if users did not agree to share data, then they will have to quit WhatsApp by 8th February 2020. So basically the message which came out through this privacy update by WhatsApp was that after this privacy update, if users did not agree to share data, then they will have to quit WhatsApp by 8th February 2020. So, accordingly, WhatsApp clarified that such privacy policies were necessary to help business grow, especially regarding WhatsApp businesses. However, as per the latest update, WhatsApp has pushed this date to 15th May 2021. Now, regarding this clarification by WhatsApp, this WhatsApp businesses was launched in 2018 to facilitate communication between business groups and customers. So based on all these understandings, there are few points which needs to be understood. India so far has not passed any data protection law, and because of this, consumers or citizens in India who uses WhatsApp are vulnerable to such unilateral action taken by such big tech companies because of lack of any regulation or laws regarding data protection. So it is in this regard, Government of India must pass data protection law as soon as possible. Now, this aspect also becomes more important because this privacy update by WhatsApp will not be applicable in European Union countries because of their data protection law, namely the General Data Protection Regulation or EU GDPR. So, overall, EU GDPR protects the citizens of European Union from this privacy updation by WhatsApp, as WhatsApp will not be able to share their data with Facebook or any other parent company or even third party. Now, this development regarding update by WhatsApp should also be seen from the perspective of digital currency of Facebook, that is Libra, which was being developed by Facebook owner Mark Zuckerberg. And this move of WhatsApp's updation of privacy also signals WhatsApp's intention to move into retail, most probably to compete with Jeff Bezos' Amazon. Now, WhatsApp always says that the messages which are sent from one person to another is end to end encrypted. Now, end to end encrypted simply means it is sent via codes between two persons. That is, any person who tries to read this coded message in between will not be able to read these messages because these messages are sent through codes, or in other words, are encrypted. However, experts in data analytics believes that these metadata can be used for digital profiling for activities which are done online. And through digital profiling, there can be commercial targeting based on certain activities by different individuals online. So these aspects needs to be understood when you go through any article regarding privacy update by WhatsApp. Now, regarding this update, even a petition has been filed in the Supreme Court of India, which highlights that ministers, judges, police, senior bureaucrats, defense personnel, traders, etc., all use WhatsApp for their communication. And through WhatsApp, important and sensitive information is being passed. So, if these information used by government authorities as well as judges are misutilized or commercially exploited, then WhatsApp or Facebook would have a metadata of enough sensitive information with respect to all government secrets. So, reveal of such data may amount to national security threat. So, this is what the petition has been filed in Supreme Court. So all these points becomes important when we understand or when we go through any article regarding privacy updates by WhatsApp. So overall the basic concerns can be summarized as thus. Number 1, there is a privacy issue because of unregulated surveillance and also because of lack of any data regulation law in India. Further, there are also issues of data transfer across countries, and this aspect needs to be addressed. Another important point to be understood is regarding unauthorized commercial exploitation of data without the consent of the user. Further, there can be possible use of these data for political purposes or to serve political ends. And as stated, there is a need for data regulation in India. So when you go through the privacy updates regarding WhatsApp, please have these important points in your mind while going through any article. Now this topic becomes important not only from the perspective of polity but also from the perspective of cybersecurity under GS paper 3, and polity shall be covered under GS paper 2. Further, questions can also be asked regarding privacy issues in your prelims examination. So this topic becomes very important from our examination perspective. Now see, as of now this news is in a developing stage. So let's wait for updation from WhatsApp and also with respect to any decision which might be taken by Government of India in near future. So with this, let's move to the next news article. Now the next news to be discussed appears on page number 12 in the FAQ section. It says, can courts stay laws made by the legislature? Now this particular news is regarding the recent Supreme Court judgment where it stayed the 3 farm laws passed by the Parliament. Now, staying of farm laws means suspending the operation of the farm laws. Now, generally, judiciary does not stay any legislation passed by the parliament because this is the constitutionally mandated duty of parliament to pass legislation approved by both houses of parliament. And it also signals the will of the people. So, passing a legislation approved by both houses of the parliament, that is Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha, is a constitutional exercise done by the legislature. And generally, the judiciary does not wade into the domain of the legislature. However, considering the protest against farm laws, the Supreme Court thought wise enough to stay these farm acts passed by the Parliament of India. Now, another aspect highlighted in this article is that staying a law by the Supreme Court is generally frowned upon by legal scholars or experts. Although Supreme Court is constitutionally empowered, especially under Article 142, and is authorized to pass any order which it thinks is necessary to do complete justice. Further, the Supreme Court is also empowered to declare any law or part of law as ultra vires or unconstitutional if certain part of the law or entire law is against constitutional principles. And here the term law must be construed or understood as provided under Article 13 of the Indian Constitution. So in this regard, you must have a thorough understanding about Article 142 and also about Article 13 of the Indian Constitution. Now, Article 142 mentions about enforcement of decrees or orders of Supreme Court and orders as to discovery. It says that the Supreme Court in the exercise of its jurisdiction may pass such decree or make such order, that is, it may pass a judgment as is necessary for doing complete justice in any cause or matter pending before it, and any decree so passed or order so made shall be enforceable throughout the territory of India in such manner as may be prescribed under any law made by Parliament. So it is very much clear that the Constitution of India has empowered Supreme Court to pass any order or decision for doing complete justice. And here the Supreme Court thought wise enough to stay these farm laws so that the protesters and the government may come to the negotiating table. So this was the wisdom behind the decision of Supreme Court with respect to staying of farm laws. Now, after understanding Article 142, let's also go through the provision of Article 13. Now, there is an interesting aspect regarding Article 13. Apart from the fact that it has defined law, which includes ordinance, order, bylaw, rule, regulation, notification, custom, or usage having in the territory of India the force of law. So, this is what law generally means according to Article 13. Now, according to Article 13, it says that any law, if it violates or is inconsistent with Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, that is, with respect to fundamental rights, then such part of the law shall be void. And this aspect is applicable for two kinds of laws. First, those laws which were in force in India prior to the commencement of the Constitution. So, the day on which Constitution commenced, if any part of such law or any law were inconsistent with Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, then such part of those laws could have been declared void since they were violative of fundamental rights or Part 3. And the second part of Article 13 says that any law made after commencement of the Constitution or any part of it can also be declared as void if such part or the entire law is inconsistent with Part 3 of the Indian Constitution. So, Article 13 becomes an important part regarding judicial review. So, as you can see, it says laws inconsistent with or in derogation of fundamental rights. All laws in force in the territory of India immediately before the commencement of this Constitution, insofar as they are inconsistent with the provision of this part, shall extend to such inconsistency be void. And part 2 of Article 13 says that the state shall not make any law, that is, after the commencement of the Constitution, state shall not make any law which abridges or takes away rights conferred by this part, that is, rights conferred under Part 3. And any law made in contravention of this clause, that is, any law which is inconsistent with fundamental rights, to the extent of the contravention be void. Suppose this is the law which has been made by the center, and this part of the law violates or is against Part 3 of the Indian Constitution. So, according to this article, this part of the law shall be declared as void, whereas the remaining part shall become operative. So, this is what is Article 13. And through Article 13, Supreme Court of India has enough powers regarding judicial review with respect to the constitutionality of a law. So we understand that judiciary must be independent enough to take certain decisions which may at times even go against the central government. For example, this decision of the Supreme Court has been taken under Article 142 to do complete justice regarding farmers' protest. Now, this aspect of an independent judiciary was covered in the March edition of Focus magazine of 2020. Now, here we discuss not only about Article 142 but also about Article 141, which says that law declared by Supreme Court shall be binding on all courts within the territory of India. Further, it also mentioned about the salient features of judicial independence in the Constitution. And first point highlighted here was separation of power under Article 50. It says that separation of power between legislature, executive and judiciary is now a part of basic structure of the Constitution. And because of this, the NJAC Act was declared unconstitutional as it was seen that the executive was interfering in the decisions of judiciary regarding appointments in higher judiciary. The next aspect of judicial independence is security of tenure of judges. Now, this provision of the Constitution says that judges cannot be removed arbitrarily by the executive, and there is an elaborate mechanism regarding the removal process of the judges, which can be only done on grounds of misbehavior or incapacity, and the process has been elaborated in the Judges Inquiry Act. So basically, there is a complete process to remove the judges. So even if a government seems antagonized by any of the judgment of the Supreme Court, then they cannot arbitrarily remove the judges. And this security of tenure is very important for an institution. Now, another important aspect regarding judicial independence is that the salary of the judges cannot be reduced during the tenure of the judges. And any privileges or allowances granted to a judge cannot be varied or reduced during the tenure of a judge to their disadvantage. Now, another important aspect is that the expense of Supreme Court is charged upon Consolidated Fund of India. Now, this is a very important aspect. The magazine says that this means that this topic cannot be voted upon in the parliament. That is, the expense of the Supreme Court cannot be reduced arbitrarily by the parliament. And this overall provides financial independence to Supreme Court in terms of its functioning, and also ensures that judiciary is not influenced through political pressure. Now, another important aspect highlighted is that jurisdiction of the courts cannot be diminished, and the constitution insulates judges from criticism in parliament and state legislatures. As Article 121 and 211 ensures or protects a judge from any contempt proceedings which may be taken against them in discharge of their duties. So, overall, all these aspects can be said to be in supportive of judicial independence, which is provided in the Constitution. Now, you can go through the other aspect which was discussed in this particular Focus magazine regarding judicial independence and also derogation of judicial independence. Thus, this news becomes important both from the perspective of prelims and also from the perspective of mains, especially from the theme of Indian judiciary. Now, based on our discussion, let's take up this prelims question asked by UPSC in 2019. The question was, with reference to the Constitution of India, prohibitions or limitations or provisions contained in ordinary laws cannot act as prohibitions or limitations on the constitutional powers under Article 142. It could mean which one of the following. So basically, UPSC expects you to know about Article 142 because previously number of judgments were given under Article 142 on the pretext of doing complete justice. Now, the options provided here were quite simple because if you knew about Article 142, you could have directly arrived at the right answer. Now, this option deals with Election Commission, this option deals with Supreme Court, this option deals with financial crisis, and this option deals with state legislatures. So here the correct answer becomes B. That is, the Supreme Court of India is not constrained in the exercise of its powers by laws made by the Parliament. And this aspect has been used to stay the farm laws in this present judgment. Thus, this news becomes important from the perspective of Indian polity and constitution, and this news also gets covered under GS paper 2 from your mains point of view. With this, let's move to the next article of discussion. Now, the next news to be understood is from the perspective of environment and appears on page number 8. The news says migratory birds flock to Punjab wetland. Now, here in this news, it highlights that winter migratory water birds using the Central Asian Flyway has started making a beeline to Punjab's Harike wetland. So, in this news, you need to know about Harike wetland of Punjab. So, the basic question is that what is a wetland? Now, wetlands are such lands which are transitional between terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems. Basically, such area where water table is usually at or near the surface. So basically, such area which is mostly inundated by water. So wetlands are areas where water covers the soil or is present either at or near the surface of the soil all year or for varying periods of time during the year, including during the growing season. So these are the important highlights about wetland. Now, this wetland is largest wetland in northern India in the state of Punjab, and it lies on the confluence of Beas and Satluj river. Now, this aspect was highlighted or rather asked by UPSC in one of the previous year's prelims question. And the news says that this wetland came into existence when a barrage was constructed across the confluence of the two rivers, namely Beas and Satluj in 1952. And the Grand Indira Gandhi Canal in Rajasthan is fed from the Harike Lake. So, the Harike Lake and the Harike wetland becomes important from your prelims point of view. Now let's see this question asked in 2014. The question was, consider the following pairs: Harike wetlands, confluence of Beas and Satluj, Culadeo Ghana National Park, confluence of Banas and Chambal, and Koleru Lake on the confluence of Musi and Krishna. So the question was, which of the above pairs are correctly matched? So this question tests your awareness about Indian maps, especially about wetlands. So yes, the first option is correct, but the other two options are incorrect. As you can see in this map, now this is the area of Harike wetland, and these two are the Bias and Satluj rivers. So yes, the Harike wetlands is there on the confluence of Bias and Satluj. However, Koleru Lake is not on the confluence of Krishna and Musi river, as Vadapalli is the place where river Krishna and Musi river meets. Now even Kolaidio National Park is not on the confluence of Banas and Chambal rivers. So in this regard, the correct answer here was A, that is one only. Now moving further to Central Asian Flyway, since this news mentions about it. It says that the Central Asian Flyway covers a large continental area of Eurasia between the Arctic and Indian Oceans and the associated island chains. And if you see in this map, this is the Asian migratory bird flyways. It further says that the flyway comprises several important migration routes of water birds, most of which extend from northernmost breeding grounds in Russian Federation, that is Siberia, to the southernmost non-breeding wintering grounds in West and South Asia. Now regarding India, India plays or has a strategic role in the flyway as it provides a critical stopover sites to over 90% of the bird species known to use this migratory route. So please remember this aspect regarding the migration of birds. Now regarding your prelims perspective, there is a certain important update with respect to wetlands conservation. It says that there has been changes which has been made in the Wetlands Conservation and Management Rules of 2017. And now the Wetlands Authority within a state is a nodal authority. Earlier it was the Ministry of Environment. And the Wetland Authority within a state is the nodal authority for all wetland specific authorities in a state or UT for the enforcement of Wetlands Conservation and Management Rules of 2017. Earlier it was taken care by the central government. Now since we are mentioning about wetland, let's go through some of the benefits of wetland. Now the first benefit is that wetlands acts as nature kidneys or sponge. Now this is because it removes polluting nutrients and sediments from the surface of the earth and also from groundwater. Wetland protects the quality of our lakes, streams and keeps the groundwater healthy. And it also plays a very important role for the aquatic ecosystems. So we can clearly see a number of benefits of having a wetlands. Now wetlands also replenish groundwater supplies and their filtering capacity also helps to protect groundwater quality. Further, these wetlands acts like a sponge and helps in flood control by soaking extra water from the surroundings. It provides habitat for wildlife and fisheries, and it also provides recreational opportunities for birds, amphibians, and mammals. Further, wetlands makes the surroundings fertile for growth of crops, and it also provides ample economic opportunity for fishing and other commercial activities for people. Now, wetland also acts as a carbon sink as soils around wetlands can store carbon for many years, and so it also helps to fight climate change. Now, wetland also provides ample opportunity for tourism and research. So, these can be said to be some of the benefits of wetland. So, definitely there is a need to preserve wetland because it provides food for species, flora, fauna, and also humans. It protects and improves the quality of water and air, and also provide fish, wildlife habitats, and also stores flood waters, and also maintains surface water flow even during dry periods. And most importantly, it acts as a natural sponge as it traps carbon dioxide and releases oxygen into the atmosphere. So overall, we can say that preserving wetlands also helps in combating climate change. So here proper use and restoration of wetland is essential to protect stored carbon and reduce avoidable carbon emissions. Preserving wetland can enhance climate adaptation and resilience from extreme weathers. Wetlands also plays a vital role in retaining water on the landscape, maintaining local climate, water cycles and also reducing extremes of temperature. Next, wetlands also provides ecological, cultural and socio-economic benefits for the society. And wetlands also contribute to human well-being through provision of food, energy, clean water and also clean air. And it also supports livelihoods and biodiversity. So these can be said to be some of the important aspects of wetland in terms of its benefits. and also how preserving wetlands helps in combating climate change. Thus, this news becomes very important from the perspective of environment, and questions can be framed both in the prelims and mains examination. In the mains, this topic gets covered under GS paper 3. Now, this topic of trans fat appearing on page number 12 in the FAQ section was taken up recently by Vaibhav sir on 4 January 2021. So, what you can do is to go through the DNS of 4 January 2021 so that you can have a complete understanding about trans fat, its constituents, and its disadvantages. Now, based on our discussion, this becomes your question for the day. The question is, which of the following can be said to be the benefits of wetlands? Options are: first, it helps to combat climate change; second, it acts as a carbon sink; and third, it replenishes groundwater supplies. So the question is, select the correct answer using the code given below. Options are A, 1 and 2 only; B, 3 only; C, 2 and 3 only; and D, 1, 2 and 3. Now, coming to the answer of yesterday, the answer is C. The question was, which of the following is our provisions under Open Skies Treaty? First, entire territory accessible to aerial observation. This is correct. And second, observation flights to be conducted by unarmed fixed wing aircraft. Both statements in this answer is correct. So the correct answer is C. That is both 1 and 2. So with this, we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you.